For my major project, I use the software Blender, predominantly because I previously used this in my prototype assessment and mini major, and primarily because of this reason, I believe that it will be easier for me to use a software that I am experienced with and to an extent moderately skilled at. For the art style, I have chosen low poly because it is simple and efficient and it takes up less time to animate a model. To create these simple models, I have decided to go with box modeling. Starting with a basic object, I use it as a basic shape for the final model, through subdividing, extruding, and adjusting its size.
Originally, I had planned to implement sculpting in the later stages of my models, however, due to a change of plans, I decided that repeating these steps in a more detailed manner and also adding several modifiers such as the mirror modifier would be sufficient.
After creating my character models, I needed to rig them with an armature, as this is the foundation for the walk cycle, which will then allow movement, like bones in a human body. To start with the rig, I selected armature in the menu and added a single bone. Likewise with box modeling, the bone that I had started with becomes the mother bone, in which I use it to expand upon the entire skeletal structure. From here on, I continue to extrude, position, and adjust the size of each bone so that it looks like a skeleton. For certain areas, however, I had to add the IK bones, respectively the foot and knee for the leg bones and elbow for the arm bones. This is needed and most importantly dispatched from the main skeleton, as these bones control the way the main bones rotate. Further on, specifically for the leg and arm bones, I adjusted the pole angle of those bones, as without adjustment, the way these bones are angled, it would move the wrong way. After the main rig was finished, similarly to how I crafted my models, I mirrored the left side and duplicated it to the right so that I wouldn't repeat the entire process again. The final step was to attach the armature onto the main character, which like all things were completely void of annoying issues. Initially, the character model morphed in a weird way, but was soon solved with apply pose with rest pose. Finally, though this wasn't needed, to make it even more easy for me, I replaced the IK control bones with basic shapes, as I disliked the complications with all the dotted lines and bones sticking out.
A key skill that I used in my major work was the correct use of lighting, one for environmental lighting and the other for character lighting. In the menu, I added a lamp and chose the sun, which brightened up the atmosphere. Additionally, I played around with the color of the sun, and this served as a basic stage of color grading, as I wanted some level of cinematography in my animation. I have also decided to incorporate the 3-point lighting system, which is a standard method that I use to illuminate the subject, whilst controlling the shading and shadows produced by direct lighting. Additionally, with environmental lighting, aside from the lamp, I also use the world lighting to illuminate the atmosphere. I chose the background in the surface tab and sky texture in the color tab, which allowed me to adjust the strength of the brightness of the world. For my walk cycle, I primarily used the NLA editor and ActionScript tools to create movement for my armature, in which one of the main rigs was a walk cycle, and the way I started was by opening the dope sheet and selecting the location rotation key in the bottom tab, which would allow me to insert a keyframe every time I move a limb on my armature. Then I would create various poses to create a series of movements, and after selecting all the bones and pressing I, it would create a single keyframe for the pose. After reflecting the pose for the opposite size, I moved to about 15 frames and create a keyframe there. However, to make a more smoother walk, I insert keyframes in between the two keyframes. I repeat the cycle, and I copy and paste the first frame and placed it on about 30 frames, making this the final frame. However, to allow it to move from one place to another, I create a new action script, and move the control bone to one end to another. Next, I go into the graph editor and change the settings to vector, which allows the same speed from start to finish. The final step is to combine both the movement script and the walk cycle script. From here, I move onto the NLA editor, insert the movement track and the walk cycle track. After repeating the cycle enough so that it covers the movement, I change the ending frame to about 29, as the first frame was copied and pasted into the last frame, and this prevents the repeat of the two frames. However, an issue I found was that the cycle wasn't actually moving. After some thorough research, I eventually realized that the control bone was the one that prevented the cycle. Deleting it and inserting the new cycle allowed my walk cycle to be completed. To create special effects in my 3D animation, one way of implementing this was the use of the node system and particle system. I chose the node system because it is an alternative and excellent way to customize the material for the chosen object. For example, adding different shaders and mixed colors for both the object or environment. An example of combining both features was creating the campfire model, which was an essential part during the second half of my animation. Firstly, I left the default cube on the side and added a plane. I then selected the plane and created a new particle system for it. Then I changed the settings to emitter and chose the object in the bottom tab and selected the default cube. As a result, particles begin to emitter below the plane. To make it go up, I changed the gravity settings all the way down to 0, thus making the particles go up. After adjusting some minor details, I added a force field above the campfire to make the particles go up in a conical shape, which was adjusted by changing the force field settings to a negative value. From here, I split the screens for the node editor, in which I select a cube and change the view on the left to render for a preview. In the node editor, I create a new material and raise the diffuse shader, replacing it with an emission shader, and this allows for lighting for the material. From here, I input a color ramp to create different temperatures for the fire, and place a divider converter to adjust the percentage of different fire colors. After adjusting the color settings, I move on to finish the rest of the campfire.